In this episode, we revisit the rotator cuff.
The sun is shining, the birds are chirping, the bacon is sizzling. Welcome to the Daily Swole.
Welcome everyone to episode 199, the last episode of the 100s, episode 199 of the Daily Mother Swole. Thank you for sharing Wesley on Facebook so I can see when you share it, so make sure you do. Flexing the left, flexing the right. Welcome to episode 199. Thank you for joining me live on Facebook and Periscope. Thanks for tuning in on YouTube and listening in on SoundCloud, iTunes, and Stitcher. Remember, it's a podcast. If you haven't checked out the podcast, especially if you're trying to catch up on other episodes that you have not seen, I know. What do? Sit in front of your computer, sit in front of your phone for like 9 or 10 days and watch every episode of the Daily Swole? You can. You can. That'd be hot. You got to record yourself and see if you could do it without losing that flex the entire time. No, that'd be boring. That'd be ridiculous to watch every single episode straight. What you can do is take advantage of those older episodes and listen in on SoundCloud and iTunes. That way you can catch up while you're driving to work, while you're at the gym, doing your cardio, walking on the beach, walking the dog, doing the dishes, mowing the lawn. I've heard all sorts of stories of people listening to the Daily Swole. And I think the podcast is a great way to listen to this material. It's awesome as a podcast. If you haven't checked it out, highly, highly recommended. Today's episode about the rotator cuff. We're getting physical, going 80s style. I have had a significant amount of caffeine today. I will be having more later on. I will be having more coffee later on. So if you want to see where this caffeine is going to take me today, make sure you follow me on Snapchat as well. So we got 6 people logged in. Let's get to 10. I'm telling you, everyone on Facebook, make sure you share. And if you're on Periscope, make sure you share that with your Twitter followers too, if anyone uses Twitter anymore. Do we use Twitter? I don't know. Rotator cuff revisited. Let's get into it. What is a rotator cuff? Well, first off, the rotator cuff is 4 muscles that provide stability to the shoulder. I have reiterated over and over and over again what the body does with alternating joints. Your body has certain areas that are stable and certain areas that are mobile. The rotator cuff is a mobile area that allows for the shoulder to move in all sorts of directions, but keep the humerus, the upper arm bone, and the scapula and the clavicle and that whole area intact, close, and secure. What up, Tennessee? What up, Tennessee? Yes, that inspirational video was sick on Facebook. The forward video, if you haven't checked that out on Facebook, make sure you check out that spotlight video. It's pinned to the top of my page. So thanks for the support, Caitlin Marie Smith. Thank you. These 4 muscles are the ones that you get injured. These are the ones that you hurt. These are the ones that are weak. People do not tear their pecs often in the gym. If you've heard of someone tearing their pec, they're generally a power lifter. It is so hard to tear your pec. The body is so strong. To tear your pec, to tear your lat, to tear your deltoid is difficult. You got to really do some bad shit to hurt one of those major muscles. What is much easier to do, was much more common to do, is to injure, tear, partial tear, full tear your rotator cuff. And that could be one. A rotator cuff is not one muscle. It's a group of muscles. Those 4 muscles, the supraspinatus, the subscapularis, the infraspinatus, and the teres minor. Those 4 muscles create a little glove that go on top of the humerus that hold the upper arm bone in place on the shoulder. If you have more stability, if you have a solid joint in your shoulder that's being secured by the rotator cuff, you're able to provide more force through your pectoralis, through your deltoid, and through your lat. So having that stability in the shoulder, increased stability, and that, of course, mobility, but having the increased stability in the rotator cuff and that security. I don't want to get too detailed with the kinesiology and the whole mobility aspects of the scapula. That's going to be another episode. But having that security, think of having the rotator cuff muscle strong as security. When you have that security, you will be able to enact more force. If it's weak, brittle, stiff, unstable, you're going to tear something. And that's when you're going to have that pain when you reach your arm up over your head. You're going to have that aching, glowing, throbbing pain down the side of your arm. These are all pain referrals and results from torn rotator cuff muscles, one of those four or multiple at the same time. There's a lot of stuff going on in the shoulder. Anytime you have a joint, you have layers of bursas, of little sacs that provide buffering. You have ligaments, you have tendons, you have nerve tissue, you have cartilage, you have all sorts of stuff, fluids, all sorts of sacs and soft tissue and things flowing through. You have a lot of stuff going on in the joint. The last thing you need is a torn muscle, is inflammation that's going to increase swelling, that will increase pressure, that will increase friction, that will increase pain. Here is how you need to think about your rotator cuff muscles. They are type 1 fibers, which means they respond to slower movement and longer duration exercise. You need to activate your rotator cuff muscles. You need to work your rotator cuff muscles. You might have seen some of my exercise videos. You might have seen in some of my previous videos how I do a lot with the rubber band, external rotation exercises, floor cobras. Rotational stability is super important with the shoulder. That's when most people get hurt. Putting their arm behind the seat to look behind them when they're backing out of a parking spot in their car, when they're reaching for their purse, when you're throwing a baseball, if you're throwing something, having catch with your kids throwing a football, when you're opening a door and someone pulls the other side and yanks your arm forward. These are all things that the rotator cuff is easy to pop, tear, snap from. These muscles are designed to be strong. They're designed to have endurance, but we don't use them. We sit at a computer, we do repetitive movements that make those muscles stiff, brittle, and when they lose their mobility, they're going to lose mobility. Your body will not maintain flexibility. They'll get more brittle, they get more stiff. They lose their action. They lose their flow. They lose their juiciness. And when they lose the juiciness, they lose the ability to stretch, recoil, provide endurance, stability, and then you get hurt. And if you get hurt with the rotator cuff, you hurt your rotator cuff, you either need a long time to repair it, you need a lot of rehab, or possibly even in worst case scenario, you need surgery to reattach the whole damn thing, and that sucks. That could be weeks or months off from doing your resistance training, so don't fall victim to that. Bands and dumbbells are great. I'm not going to be able to demonstrate right now because I'm just talking about doing the rotator cuff exercise, but external rotations, using a dumbbell, using a band for external rotation exercises are fantastic. There should be some exercise videos talking about the floor cobra on my YouTube channel. Those types of exercises that will isolate the rotator cuff, make sure that when you're doing your external rotation, you're keeping a pad under your arm so your body doesn't squeeze the humerus too close to the ribs. Make sure that you're doing slow movements and make sure that you're doing higher repetitions. So you don't need a lot of weight. Anytime you're doing a rotator cuff exercise, something that you're looking up online, something that you have determined would be something you want to try, you want to make sure you're doing slow movements and you're doing higher repetitions. I will make sure that there is an exercise video on my YouTube channel, if there isn't already, for a great band-related or dumbbell-related external rotation exercise. If it's not already there, I'll make sure it's uploaded ASAP. But make sure that you start implementing the following in your workout. Yes, you could do that exercise that I'm going to post, but guess what? Guess what you can do that will work the rotator cuff, that will increase flexibility, increase mobility, increase stability, and decrease your risk of injury? Yoga. You could do yoga. You could not worry so much about doing all these corrective exercises and increase your yoga. That's going to increase the stability. That's going to increase stabilizers. Most of any type of yoga flow, hatha yoga, doing vinyasa, any type of basic yoga and entry-level yoga especially, and up to the more advanced, really target the mobility of the shoulder girdle and will increase the action of the rotator cuff muscles. When you have that, trust me, when you have your rotator cuff strong, supportive, and working properly, you will feel less pain in your neck. You'll decrease neck pain. You'll increase your posture, especially if you're doing things like floor cobras and yoga. You will increase your ability to do weights, to increase your force output. You'll increase your endurance for all sorts of activity, including resistance training. There is no negative side to yoga. There's no negative to training your rotator cuff, except if you haven't done any type of rotator cuff training and you start doing bands and dumbbells and you start doing too much too soon. So make sure you're only doing maybe 1 or 2 sets, 15, 20 repetitions, get a good burn, get a good, maybe not quite to fail. You don't have to crush it, but make sure you implement it maybe every other day or every couple days first, if you're doing specific targeting. That way you don't overdo it and you don't weaken it, because if you train it and you beat it up and you break it down and then you start going to do a lot more weight training that whole week, you're working with maybe a compromised rotator cuff and you don't want to make it worse than what it might already be. So start activating it, start turning it on, and keep an eye out. Check my exercise video list on YouTube. And if you haven't, and keep an eye out if it's not already there, make sure you keep an eye out for the next coming videos that talk more about rotator cuff activation in the gym with bands and with dumbbells, okay? External rotation, super important. Floor cobras, dumbbell and band external rotation. Check out my exercise videos, all those core activation exercises, and make sure that you start thinking about your rotator cuff as part of your warm-up and as part of your standard warm-up and training routine, not just a post-injury corrective exercise program. Do it before you get hurt and you will reduce your risk of injury dramatically and increase your progress and your force production exponentially. Thank you for joining me for episode 199 of the Daily Mother Swole, revisiting the rotator cuff. It's always good to come home. It's always good to bring the beef back to the stables once in a while. Rotator cuff, I love talking about that stuff. So do your yoga, get it done. I'll stay for a few minutes after on Facebook Live and Periscope. Peace out. See you tomorrow for episode 200 of the Daily Sweezy. Peace.